You've seen the thumbnail and you've seen the title, so let's make this clear. It's probably a little way out at the moment, but we've had basically confirmation from Chris Cox via Bloomsburg that a digital version of Commander is on the horizon. This video is going to be minimally edited simply because I saw this news as I was getting ready to pack my bags and go to Axion's anniversary event over the weekend. So this video feels a little bit light in edits. I'm sorry, okay? I'm not Mr. Beast. I haven't got the hyper retention boom, 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 or the allegations either. Either way, let's get into it. If you're buying cards, coolstuffinc.com, 5% off your order when you use the code KENOBI at checkout, and it helps to support the show. There's an article on Bloomberg that came out over a day ago, actually, and no one has really spoken about it. I just came across it on Reddit this morning when I was editing up another video that's now pushed back by a day. Hasbro Gamer CEO to focus on play after parring film assets. I actually don't know what this parring means in this context. In essence, the majority of the article talks about how Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, to a larger extent, have started to push off their licensing of their own movies and similar. We saw it last year when they sold a load of assets, including one at a huge loss, around making films and TV. Transformers 1 and Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves were critically praised but not successful at the box office and didn't make them enough money. It's a typical Hasbro thing, right? Everything at Hasbro seems to fail and struggle, except for Monopoly Go, a bit of D&D, and then by a major long shot, Magic the motherfucking Gathering. It makes them so much money. The article will be linked in the description below if you want to read it fully. I'll actually link to it via someone that you don't have to sign up via your email address like I had to, which was frustrating. But in essence, it goes on about Chris Cox being from Microsoft originally, Monopoly Go, a digital app version of Monopoly, being a revamp for the brand, and how Baldur's Gate made quite a lot of money too, and was absolutely a critical success. Yeah, all stuff we kind of already knew that I've covered in videos before. I'm going to jump a little bit around the article now as I point out some stuff that is either said explicitly by Cox and quoted, or perhaps paraphrased. One of them needs a citation. I'm going to be very clear about that in a moment. It's on the Bloomberg article as they're interviewing Chris Cox, so it should be info, but I'm a little bit dubious of this. First up, they mentioned how Hasbro is looking to invest more in its Magic's video game formats. Sales of the fantasy card game have grown each of the last 6 years, and in 2022, as we all know, it hit $1 billion in revenue. But Cox says Magic Arena, whilst popular, doesn't harness Magic's two biggest growth areas, collectability and its Commander format, which involves more players and cards. Let's unpack that a little bit. Collectability is a huge thing for Magic right now. It is trying to do what Pokemon does, giving us all sorts of texture foils and weird, shiny, glossy crap that people can open 6 collector boosters to try and get hold of and then sell on the secondary market. I am not against it. It's just not a thing that I care that much about, but I don't dislike it being part of Magic. If anything, having these chase variants push down the price of normal playable staples makes formats more accessible. This is a positive thing for the most part. The flip side of that, though, is that, of course, there is a million frames of absolutely fucking everything, making it tracking your collection or selling cards online or being a store an absolute pain in the ass. Hell, just looking up the type of card that you've opened to figure out what it might sell for in the secondary market can be a fucking monumental task when there's 10 plus versions of a card. It's kind of crazy. On top of all that, there's a slight downside to all the collectability that I will mention here, is that when you open a card and you open like an extended border foil version of a card and you're like, wow, I've opened a, crown jewel here, can't wait to trade this in at my local store for some cards. Then you find out it's not the most desirable version and is thus only worth 5p. Yeah, that's a thing. Ultimately, having loads of versions of the cards that are cheap is great, but there is a little bit of a feel bad about opening something that looks like it should be so spanky and shiny, but it's just not the spankiest or the shiniest. I don't know why I'm using the word spanky in that context there. And then he talks about Commander. That's right, the golden goose that keeps on milking. It's the way that Wizards of the Coast are going to make a shit ton of fucking money forevermore, or at least they believe they will. It is the casual format that gets all those players that are scared to play in tournaments at the local events still into their stores to play Magic with other people, to crack packs, to buy singles, to prop up the game via their spending habits. And I'm saying all this like it sounds like I'm taking the piss. I'm not. Commander is a huge thing that is a positive boon to Magic for the most part. I often mock the mentality that it brings about, the babying of Magic players. Absolutely, that is a problem we have as a community learning to play and to grow. But overall, I don't see Commander as this killing of Magic that some old boomers do. That said, it being the forefront and the money spinner, it is fucking weird that it wasn't on Arena. If anything, that was some huge fucking oversight, right? Oversight is a word that I would say Hasbro and Wizards often can be described as having. I'll unpack that more as we go. Currently, Hasbro is testing a video game version of Commander, which would potentially be separate from Arena, and allow for more than 2 players to compete. Hasbro is also looking to make the digital versions of these cards more collectible, like popular game Marvel Snap. Whoa boy, that's the big one. They are testing a digital version of Commander. That's right. This isn't, we should probably do that eventually, or it might end up on a digital client one day. This is actually, holy fuck, the CEO of Wizards of the Coast, the CEO of Hasbro saying to Bloomberg, Yes, we're testing a thing. Now, this is the citation part. It's not in quotes, so it's not something he has literally said to them, but it is said in here almost as if it's paraphrased from what they've been told by either Cox himself or other members of staff at this meeting/interview. It's not 100% clear. If I'm honest, the article's kind of a bit wonky in its writing in that way. But either way, this is hugely more a real thing than we've ever had about this. Now, let's clear up some of this stuff. So firstly, Digital Magic does already have Commander on Magic the Gathering Online, but it plays quite poorly, and it's not really designed for 4-player Magic. The main thing with Magic the Gathering Online is that there are loads of cards on there and it looks like shit, sure. But the biggest problem with it is that it tries to emulate exactly the structure of how Magic works and its in-depth rule system. I mean, there's a lot of priority passing. What I mean by that, for the people who've come here who aren't Modo nerds or are just relatively new to Magic, is that in Magic, whenever you cast a spell or do a thing in a game of Magic, priority is passed around the table to each opponent that you've got and then back to you to resolve the thing. So I put a spell on the stack, it goes to player B, C, and D before it goes to player A to then resolve the spell. And like, that sounds like it's not much of an issue, and it's not in paper, because I say, here's a spell, and everyone either nods, thumbs up, or just doesn't gesture at all because they've got no actions to take. Online, you of course have to give people a window to interact. And let's say, hypothetically, everyone takes a second to 2 seconds to click OK, confirm, or whatever the dialogue would be in a digital space. That adds up as people take action after action after action. Because it's not just spells. Like activating an ability that isn't a mana ability, so not tapping a land, but anything else, basically, passes priority as well. On Modo, you can pass full priority by hitting F6 or F8, I forget what it is these days, and that allows you to pass all priority. Sometimes you need to keep priority up to just bluff a thing and do stuff like that. In essence, the way that Magic the Gathering set up online at the moment with MTGO, it is a fucking hot mess of figuring out how to make the game flow smoothly and be a fun game like a game of paper Commander is, whilst also maintaining the ability to interact when you need to. That's the crux of where they need to put the most effort in terms of game design and how you would interact with the game. Of course, there's coding all the cards, which I'm sure Wizards are going to make out is the hardest task in the world because they won't pay people respectable wages or employ enough staff. But really, it's about innovating the UI and how we interact with the game of Magic to make Commander work in a digital space. That's the real place that they need to test and figure out. On the Marvel Snap thing, I guess that just means they want to sell us a lot of alternate arts and alternate frames and stuff like that. And you open multiples, you can merge them together to create a new ink blot or some shit. I don't fucking know. If I'm honest, it sounds like shareholder speak. It sounds like they're saying this so someone who's a fucking investor can read this. They vaguely know, because they have eyes in the digital game market or the toy market, that Marvel Snap is making some fucking money and some bank, and thus Wizards of the Coast and Magic doing anything like that is a good thing. Because if anyone who knows anything about Magic and his digital clients reads this, you're like, they're already fucking doing this. We've just spoke about fizzy pop rares and texture rares. You can buy skins for your cards on Arena right now. It's no fucking different to Snap. I generally do not understand what Chris Cox or the paraphrasing of Chris Cox or Wizards staff is saying there, because that already is the case. That's nothing new. It feels like a gesture to shareholders and stock and investors. But if we go back to the digital Commander thing more wholesale, there's a more important point here, is that this is not talking about implementing this on Arena, the current digital client that they've been pushing for years at this point. This is talking about a new video game of Commander. Now look, that could be a classic Jewels of the Planeswalker where they just give you a inventory of cards to play in, and it's like a digital thing they can release on Xbox and PlayStation and similar. But let's be fucking real, they're not doing that. The video game industry of which Cox wants to tap into is not about doing one and done video games anymore. You need live services where you can keep spending your fucking money, and that is exactly what Magic wants, because Magic is like the first live service. Magic was doing this when the video game industry was still burying ET carts in the desert. That's actually not true. It sounded good on paper, but I'm pretty sure ET was buried in the desert and that crash happened in like the 80s, and Magic didn't start till 1993. Just to clear up for the actual retro video game nerds, you're like, Vince, you're full of shit. I'm not, it just sounded good and I wanted to say it. I'm sorry, okay? I cleared it up afterwards. What if someone turned off the video right there and now thinks that ET was buried in the desert in 1996? I'm sorry I'm spreading misinformation. But then again, that's kind of what we do on the internet these days, right? Yeah. Back to the original point before I got stuck on the Atari ET thing, is that they will not be adding this to Arena from the sounds of things, or that's not their current intention. So it's a new third client, or arguably fourth if we include that Jewels of the Planeswalkers at one point had packs you could buy and an economy to buy into. So you've already had your collection on Magic the Gathering Online, which you could sell out of and actually make money back on your cards. Oh, I know, crazy idea, right? Jules the Planeswalkers, closed economy, couldn't get your money back out, and they killed it really suddenly and fucked over the small portion of people that are playing it. Arena, we've all adopted it, whether it be free to play or actually buying into it to play Standard and hopefully one day Pioneer and Brawl in place of Commander and so on and so on and so on. Put fucking Gladiator on there, come on. And now they want you to buy it a fourth time? Holy guacamole. Now look, there is a whole thing of like, what if they allow Arena migration? What if this is Arena 2.0? Absolutely fantastic, I would love that. But the precedent is, in the past, that they've never done that. They've never allowed us to move our inventory across. Pokemon did. When Pokemon jumped from whatever the fuck the old client was to Pokemon Desktop Live. I'm sorry, all the names are dog shit for the Pokemon stuff, so I can never remember what it's called. The Pocket one? The game is Pocket Monsters. Why is this called Pocket? But they allowed migration of collections from one digital client to the next before a certain date when they moved from basically what was Magic the Gathering Online to their version of Arena. Magic never did that, never planned to do that, and probably would never do that again. They would much rather you buy in again, which will boil my piss if and when that comes about. And the thing is, I'd love to abstain, I'd love to say, fuck it, I'm not doing that, but the point is, my channel's around Magic, and a digital Commander client would be a huge boon to making content in that space. So I would probably be frustratingly dragged by the hair into this. I can't say no to it, unfortunately. I will cover it minute by minute as we get there, of course, and hell, this might be 2 years, 3 years out from now. But if they're testing it, it's a reality that we're going to get. Not if, but more when. The funniest thing about this push towards digital video games and such, the article talks about them investing $1 billion, I think it was, in video games over time. They're making a new digital RPG, aren't they, with some of the founding members of original BioWare, the guys who made original Baldur's Gate. There's all this excitement around what Wizards and Hasbro are doing in terms of moving into video game spaces. But then this article also mentioned something I didn't know, which was they've cancelled at least 5 video games amidst the post-pandemic contractions in the industry, with more than 11,500 video game workers have lost their jobs so far this year. That's not from Wizards of the Coast, that's in the industry as a whole. Some analysts predict the market will rebound in 2025, but still won't hit the COVID-fueled highs of 2021. We're talking brands, we're talking industry highs. It's an article about finance, right? But it's funny that they're talking about like investing this money into making digital video game versions of their stuff, and supposedly there's 5 different products that got shit canned as a way to make the finance sheets look correct to the investors at some point. It's just so funny. It's like no forethought. That's what I said earlier, right? Was it forethought I used? Lack of foresight? Either way, no Commander on the Arena client, cancelling games over here, but here we're investing more money into games. It's fucking wild to me. We've had the emergence of the Magic the Gathering TV show. I did a whole video on how that news got fucking confuddled by other media outlets. But either way, that's coming, apparently still, even though they changed direction potentially. But then they're also talking about how they're moving away from movies and TVs and funding it themselves. It's all quite a confusing mess of, do they even know which direction they're really going in? I'll leave you this last bit that Chris Cox said, where he talks of how what makes Magic so successful is what will drive Hasbro's future success. Cox said, with a bit of a cackle in his voice, it's grounded in play. All of this after some anecdote about him bluffing a card at the table. I wasn't sure why they brought up the bluffing of this this grey card that didn't matter, did nothing, or unpowerful or whatever. I thought maybe they were making a comment about Chris Cox's ability to bluff or whatever. I don't know. Either way, sure, I think the future of the game is in having it be played more than a collectible, but here you are saying that collectability is something that you need to invest in more. I don't know. It's marketing gumph. Who gives a fuck? The takeaway is there will be digital Commander. I can't say it. There will be digital Commander. It's a matter of when, not if. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk or whatever they say on the internet now, the kids. I'm too old for this shit. I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now, bitches.